What's up guys, it's Tube, and it just so happens that X and Y sequels were confirmed. I'll tell you all about it, but I like to start this off saying I called it. I knew this would happen. I knew they had X and Y sequels planned and it was scrapped. If you look at Pokemon X and Y, it's a great game. They introduced Mega Evolution in it, but what people will say when they remember X and Y is that it ended early, it felt incomplete. And that's because there was more that was meant to go into it. Allow me to explain. So a beta for Pokemon Sun and Moon got leaked, and it revealed game files that talk about each Pokemon game. A little classifier. I'll cut all the crap and show you this. When it comes to listing the versions of Pokemon game, we've got Red and Green, Gold and Silver, Diamond and Pearl, Colosseum, White, Black, White 2, Black 2, XY, Sapphire Remix, Ruby Remix, Kalos Reserve number 3, Kalos Reserve number 4, and then Sun, Moon, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon. They had games reserved for Kalos. Finally, being able to see this confirms so much, but we didn't even need to see this to know how obvious it was that there was supposed to be X and Y sequels. I don't even think X and Y third version, like a Platinum. I think it was meant to be full-on sequels, like Pokemon Black and White. I called this in a live stream, and let me show you why it was so obvious. They even showed the Kalos reserves after Ruby and Sapphire remakes, which doesn't equate to the order. So you would get X and Y 2013, Auras in 2014, and maybe XZ and YZ in 2015, which is also the blank year for Pokemon, where they took a whole year off, and they haven't done that since. They had Sun and Moon, Ultra Sun and Moon, Let's Go, Sword, and the DLC. There's been no full years off. And if you think about it, X and Y would warrant a year off because they recreated models for all 700 Pokemon at the time. Animations, they upped everything from Black and White, like 2.5D, all the way to full-on 3D. Even then, they didn't take a year off. Black 2 and White 2 came out in 2012 for America in October, and then just 3 months later they announced X and Y. If they didn't even take a break between Black 2 and White 2, what is this 1 year gap between Auras and Sun and Moon? What is in Sun and Moon that requires this gap? The models are the exact same, the animations are the exact same. The only big step up that I will give them is that it went from chibi models with Auras and X and Y to full-on models, as you see Lily running in Sun and Moon. Did that little transition take a whole year versus them wasting no time here to jump from Black and White to X and Y within months? Now obviously when it comes to game titles, they're working on them years in advance. The Name Eternus was probably in Masuda's office in like 2016, you never know. But it just don't make sense when we had the blank year in 2015 and then the leaks came up about some Pokemon Sun and Moon. Now that we know what Sun and Moon is, they're great games, but it didn't exactly show us why they needed a year off. This doesn't need to be said, but I'm obviously for Game Freak taking years off. A delayed game turns out amazing versus a rushed game. And the best example I can give you is Sword and Shield, how you don't even consider that post game, and that it seems so inconsequential that you just say Sword and Shield has no post game until the DLCs came out. It was meant to be like a mini Delta episode. There's a legendary, your rival even gets a legendary, but Sword and Shield, who carried as the villains in that arc, didn't even have a custom theme to go with them. So it felt like you're playing an extra mission. Like it felt like you're saving Bill from the Pokemon machine. It felt that important. Let me show you guys the video game sales. So check this out. When Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire came out, it sold 16 million copies. With Emerald, a little slightly modified version, another 7 million copies. Pokemon Diamond and Pearl sold 17 million copies, more than Ruby and Sapphire, and then Platinum sold another 7 million copies, more than Emerald. Now comes Pokemon Black and White, and Game Freak is ready to tackle the Pokemon formula in a whole new way. They do a mini reboot. Black and White had a new feel, and there were no former Pokemon in the game. You couldn't get Charmander or anything. You had to use only Gen 5 Pokemon that you found in the story. And instead of upping the power scale further from Groudon and Kyogre, the Behemoth and Leviathan, all the way to Time-Space Gods, they went with a more metaphorical type of legendary with yin and yang, truths and ideals. They took a whole different approach and gave the villain an actual legendary to use against you. It was great. And that was just the first part of the game, because they make a sequel that takes place 3 years later, and they unload a whole journey for Pokemon Black and White. Let me show you this. Black and White sold 15 million copies. That's less than Diamond and Pearl, and that's less than Ruby and Sapphire. It happens. Video game sales go down. But Pokemon Black 2 and White 2 sequels, not third versions, sold half as much as Black and White. Half as much. This is a full-on sequel. This is not like making Pokemon Platinum out of Diamond and Pearl. But look, Essentially, they sold the exact same amount. They made full-on sequels for these games, but it sold as if it was a third version. People don't care for sequels. By people, I mean Pokemon fans. And it just sold half of Black and White. This is a failure. This and Game Freak's book is a failure. There's like a 1.5 year gap between Black and White and Black 2 and White 2, and it ended up yielding something bad. Now, obviously, when Game Freak sees this, they're like, this is terrible. We've messed up on the formula. They know it was their fault and that they should never have made a sequel, and that their idea that they should do something for the hardcore fans versus for the hype ended up in a failure. Not to blame you guys, but that is just the facts. The sequels are a failure. But see, mind my words, there was a 1.5 year gap between Black and White and Black 2 and White 2. Yes, because of Black 2 and White 2, but also because for those years they were also working on X and Y. So during X and Y's developmental period, they've already begun this mindset of, hey, we're gonna try to make sequels. So by the time they finished most of X and Y and Black 2 and White 2 came out around the same time, they realized sequels were a whole failure. And so X and Y was mostly complete. When you're seeing that first X and Y trailer with the starters, with the new 3D and all, the game's already done. There are some modifications like the camera angle that you can see in the final gameplay, but the game is done at that point. The only reason they put gameplay footage is not final is for legal reasons. X and Y was already done when they made Black 2 and White 2 and released it. And they saw it was a failure, and they looked back at X and Y and realized that they had written a whole sequel for X and Y as well. They have all this material after X and Y that's supposed to take place. Southern Kalos? I would believe it now that we've gone to the Crown Tundra. The locked power plant with Volcanion, all the left mysteries, AZ's still roaming in the game, but he disappears the moment you fight him after the Elite Four. He's not even standing somewhere in the post game. X and Y had a perfect cutoff, like sliced bread, and that's because they had content written as a full-on sequel, but they looked at Black and White, saw it was a failure, and they just tossed X and Y in the trash. They're like, we are done with this game, we're moving on, we're scratching it. 2013 X and Y comes out, they work on Auras for 2014 and shake their mind clean and work on Sun and Moon. While meanwhile, there was a whole Kalos reserve here. This is taken from the future. So this is after Sun and Moon, Sun 2 and Moon 2, everything came out. So they didn't even finalize the names for X and Y. That's how bad it was scrapped, the sequels. And that's how I know it is not a third version. Had it not been a whole sequel that they had already written that they had to scrap, and it was just a refined version of X and Y, where Lysandra awakens both Yveltal and Xerneas, pisses off Zygarde, and you gotta fight him instead, but it's mostly the exact same story, they would have released it. They would have worked on Pokemon Z and released it. It is the easiest 7 million copies they could have sold, but that's not the plan they had. They were literally so turned off by these sales that didn't even want to touch X and Y anymore. Perfect Zygarde is the ultimate proof something was meant to exist. You can't help but question, there's a whole Perfect Zygarde and Sun and Moon with the least importance ever. You don't need this leak for it to be so obvious full-on sequels were supposed to exist. And now we have proof that they were confirmed. That's really the end of this video, but if you want to go a bit further, hell, even Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee sold more than Black 2 and White 2. And to go into the future a bit, Pokemon Sword and Shield, they changed their formula from their mindset in Black and White and focus on hype now, and it sells 18 million copies, which outsold the rest. Outsold Sun and Moon, Black and White, Diamond and Pearl, even Ruby and Sapphire. And as of September, that number has gone up to 19 million. Game Freak's not gonna make a game if the right people aren't gonna buy it. There is an X and Y sequel story written somewhere in Masuda's notes. A whole folder with what's supposed to happen in X and Y sequel, what Perfect Zygarde was really supposed to be about, and what Lysander does. With the way X and Y ended, you think Lysander dies, either from the Xerneas Blast or Yveltal Blast. Maybe he's meant to come back in the second game like a whole Getsus. Maybe there's an epic moment with AZ, and maybe AZ dies at the end of X and Y sequel, you don't know. But now that it's wiped from history, none of that ever happened. That's really all I want to share. Shank that like button. I'll see you on the next video. Take care.
Bitch, I'm the man. Give me my spot on that throne. They didn't want me to grow. They didn't know. I would make all of them go. I did it all on my own. Man, what was you? When I was trapped in my zone. Never had nothing to own. Now it's all good. All of that frontin' is gone. I'm out here stunning for show. Bitch, I'm a pro.